Hi, it's Becky here from Genie Frog Crochet, and today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this really simple scrap basket. So I've made a couple of different sizes here. Really simple. It's made with 2 yarns held together. It's still, because I'm making it with acrylic yarn, it's still quite what's the word, pliable. So I made one for Halloween for holding sweeties at the front door if anybody calls, but then I fancied making one for holding a tub of sweets at Christmas. So this one that I'm going to show you today is the right dimensions to hold a tub of sweets, which unfortunately is empty right now. So yeah, I'm going to show you the stitch count for that, but these baskets are so versatile. They can be made with any weight of yarn, with any hook size, and you can just make them any size that you like, just by following the stitch pattern that I'm going to show you just to do this base. And then you just carry on working your rows up until it's as tall as you'd like it to be. So without further ado, let's have a look at what we're going to need to do this today. So for today's tutorial, I have chosen some scrap DK yarn from my stash. I wanted to use up some of my variegated stash that I've got, and I've got a couple of plain colours because you're going to work your basket up holding 2 strands of yarn together. So as I said, you can do it with any yarn. So mix any yarn that you like. I'm using DK because I have a lot of DK. And I'm going to be using, even though I'm holding 2 strands together, I'm going to be using a 5mm hook because that will give my stitches a nice tight weave. But again, have a little experiment. See if you want your basket to be a bit stiffer. You could use cotton. You could use a smaller hook size. It's entirely up to you, but I'm just going to show you today how I make mine. So your yarn, your chosen hook, you'll also need scissors, a darning needle and a stitch marker because we're going to be working in a continuous round. So you'll need a stitch marker to keep tabs of where you are. So I'm going to find the end of my yarn, wherever it may be. So I've got the end of this one, let's move those over there, and the end of this one. So my tutorial today is going to be in US terms as always. So let's make a start. Let me zoom in a little bit. There we go. Okay, so you can start with a magic circle if you so choose. I don't use a magic circle myself. I always chain 4 and join. So I'm going to take both my yarns and make a slip stitch. And then I'm going to pop that onto my hook. So in place of a magic circle for me or a magic ring, I'm going to do a chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I'm going to slip stitch to my first chain. And that's how I'm just going to create my circle. So all of my stitches will be going into that tiny little middle hole right there. So for round 1, we're just going to make 8 single crochets into that stitch. So I'm going to chain 1 just to get me up to the right height, but that chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch. And then into the center, I'm going to do 8 single crochets. So I'm going to insert my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through both. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. And as I said, we're going to be working in continuous rounds, so we're not going to join with a slip stitch. We're just going to carry on now in this first single crochet. So make sure you've got 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So into that first single crochet, we're going to do our first increase. So we're going to make 2 single crochets into that first stitch. 1 and 2. And then you want to place a stitch marker in that first single crochet that you made into that stitch. And for this round, all we're going to do is we're going to place 2 single crochets into each stitch, which we will call an increase. So we're going to increase the number of stitches we have by 2. So at the end of this row or round, you should have 16 single crochets. Can take a bit of getting used to working with 2 yarns. But I've made so many of these baskets. I find it really, it's an amazing way to use up your scraps, and it's quite therapeutic. Once you've got your base done, working up the sides, you don't have to count, you just go round and around and around. So at this point you can pull your tail tight to close up that centre. So that's the end of round 2. So for round 3, in this first stitch where we've got our stitch marker, I'm going to pull that out and make 1 single crochet in there. And then put your marker back in. And then in the next, we're going to do an increase. So 2 single crochets in there, and we're just going to repeat that all the way around. We're going to do 1 single crochet on its own, and then an increase in the next. One single crochet on its own, and then an increase. One, and then increase, and then 1, my yarn's trying to run away. 1 and then increase, and then 1 and increase. Like so. So in the next row, next round, we're going to put, sorry, I keep putting my stitch marker in my mouth and then I realise I've got to talk. I shouldn't do that while I'm filming. So in the first stitch, you're going to put 1 single crochet on its own and then pop your stitch marker back in. And then in the next, just another 1 on its own. So now we've got 2 single crochets before we do our increase in the next stitch. And that's what we're going to do in this round. We're going to do 2 single crochets on their own, 1 and 2, and then do our increase. So do that all the way around. 1 and 1, and then increase. So do that all the way around, and I will meet back up with you when we get to our stitch marker. So I just increase in my last stitch. So for the next round, it won't surprise you, we are going to be doing 3 single crochets before our increase. So all we're doing to make this base bigger, so the first one, put my stitch marker back in, 1, 2 and 3, and then an increase. All we're doing is increasing the number of single crochets in between our increases by 1 each round. So this round it's 3, 1, 2 and 3, and then increase. And the next round will be 4, but we'll be doing it slightly different. So I'll meet up with you when we get to the stitch marker. Keep on going round, 3 single crochets on their own, and then an increase in the next. And I'll meet up with you at the marker. So I'm up to my stitch marker. What I'm actually going to do now, and this is entirely up to you when you choose to do this in your project. If you don't want to do it, if you just want to use 2 of the same colours all the way through, it's up to you. But I am going to cut my cream yarn, and I'll come back to it later. And instead I'm going to join it to this parchment buff colour, and to do that I'm going to make a magic knot so that I don't have any ends to weave in. So to do that, all I do is lay my yarn down, and then I tie the end of the new colour to there, and then I twist it round, and I do exactly the same, tie the cream onto the buff colour, and of course I'm all fingers and thumbs because I'm filming. Like that, and just pull it quite tight. Then you'll see you've got your yarn joined by 2 knots. Then you can then pull those knots until they meet, and then get both of your buff ends and pull them tight, both of the cream ends, pull them tight, and that knot now is not gonna go anywhere. Dad joke alert. So then you can snip off the ends, and I can then continue working with this yarn, and it's almost like well, it's a magic join, a magic knot. Sorry, I've really got a frog in my throat whenever I decide to film. It must be a psychological thing, I imagine. Anyway, I digress. So for the next round, we are going to be doing 4 stitches between our increases. But in order to put so that your circle stays as a circle and doesn't start having this blocky shape where your increases are, we're going to split them up. So at the beginning, instead of doing the 4 single crochets, we're just going to place in 2 on their own. So the first one you put your marker back into, and the second one in the next stitch. That's 2 single crochets on their own. Then we're going to put our increase into the next stitch. Then we're going to do 4 single crochets, . 4, and then our increase. And then 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, then an increase, and do that all the way around. And then you will find just before your stitch marker, you'll do your increase and you'll have 2 stitches left. So you'll still have the 4 between the increases, but they're split up, so your increase is now in a different place in this round. So carry on, do 4 and then you increase, 4 and then you increase, and I'll meet up with you when we get to the stitch marker. So I've just done my increase, and as you can see, I've got 2 stitches left. So the next round, I'm going to be doing 5 single crochets between the increases, and I'm going to do all 5 at the beginning. So first one, don't forget to put your marker back in. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then my increase. So I'm going to do that on this row, this round. Then the next round, when I've got 6 between my increases, I'm going to split it again, 3 and 3. Then the next round I'll do 7, and for the round with 8 I'll split it again, 4 and 4. So you're going to alternate where you put your increases, so it should keep it in a nice round shape. So this round, 5 single crochets, increase all the way around. The next round, 3, increase 6, increase 6, increase 6, and the other 3 will be at the end here. Hope that makes sense. So I'm going to alternate doing that. So it'll be 7, and then 4 and 8, then 9, and you'll split the 10, 5 and 10 between your increases. So I'm going to go all the way up to the round with 12 increases between each, 12 single crochets on their own between each stitch. So that round for me will start with 6, then my increase, and I'll do the 12s, and then I'll end with 6, and then I will meet up with you when I'm ready to start building my basket up. You can follow this to make, you could stop here and start building up and make like a mug holder or a pen pot or anything you like. You can do this any size you like. You can go bigger than I'm going to go, but I'm going to show you, as I said, the size that fits this celebration tub for me. So I will meet back up with you after I finished my round with 12 single crochets between the increases. Okay, so I'm just on the repeat. I've just done 12. So I'm going to do my increase, and then I should have 6 left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's always nice when that happens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So if you wanted to go, and don't worry if your work is all wibbly wobbly around the outside, that's totally fine, particularly when you're working with more than one yarn and a smallish hook. It will flatten out, I promise. So if you wanted to go any larger, you would just continue to do the pattern of stitching that we've been doing. So the next round would be 13 stitches, then an increase. And then the round after that would be 14, but you would split it up, 7 at the beginning, 7 at the end. And you just continue if you wanted to make it bigger. You will see from, if I show you, Zoom out a little bit. So you'll see from the other basket that I made, here is the size of the circle that I made, and this little ridge here is the round that we're just about to make. So if you're making something for, I don't know, a flower pot holder, my suggestion would be make your initial circle, this circle, slightly smaller than you want your actual basket to be, because it will take a few rounds for it to kind of sit nicely when we stop doing the increasing. So we have a choice now. So to make this little ridge, I like to crochet in the third loop. So let me zoom back in again. Let me take my hook out. So to make the next round, you could either go into the back loops only of your single crochets. So if you, it's difficult to see because obviously we're using more than one yarn, but I will try my best. So if you were going to go into the back loops only, you see this V of your stitch, you would go just under the back loops of these single crochet stitches, which is slightly easier to get into. Or you could do what I'm going to do, and that's go into the third loops. Again, if you do decide to do the third loops, it is a fiddly round. It does take a while because of the double strands. So the third loops of your stitches are these loops on the back here. So when I work into this next stitch, I will be going under the third loop and trying to catch both strands of yarn. It is very fiddly, but it does give you a nice ridge on the bottom. If you're not overly bothered about having this ridge, then I would suggest perhaps going into the back loops only as opposed to the third loop, because it is going to be very tricky for me to get into the third loops, but I just like the look that it gives. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. So we're just going to do a single crochet still into the third loop. So I'll go behind all of the loops from the stitch, and I tend to use either my thumb or my finger to slide those stitches onto my hook, yarn over and make a single crochet. I'm going to mark that stitch just so that I can see where my round started. So if you are going to do the third loop, it will take a bit longer to do this row. So if I move that yarn out of the way, so I want to go under these two loops here, and they can be quite tight, which is why I said you have got the option. If you don't have the patience to do this round in the third loops, you can always go in the back loops and it will still give you a nice ridge. So all you want to do, no increasing at all. Just do a single crochet in either the third loop or the back loop, whichever you choose, all the way around until you get back to your stitch marker. And I will meet you up when we get to this last stitch here. Okay, good luck. So I am almost there, thank goodness. Probably my least favourite round, but as with quite a lot in crochet, it's so worth it, even the bits you don't like. Probably should have waited until I was nearly there. Right, so one more. Let's pop that stitch marker out of the way a second. Last one is the trickiest. There we go. So the next stitch now is where we had our stitch marker. So I'm just going to put a single crochet in the top of there. Put the stitch marker back. And now comes the fun bit, because now you literally just single crochet around and around and around. No increases, no counting, and you can do as many rounds as you like to get your basket to the height that you would like. So for the one that I'm doing for the sweet tub, I'm going to be doing roughly 21 rows before I do the handles. So just go ahead and make as many rows as you like to get your basket up to the height that you would like before you put your handles on. And I will meet back up with you when we get there. But you can see the ridge that going into the third loop has given me. Just across there. I think it's worth it. Okay, so I will meet back up with you when my basket is at the point where I want to add in my handles. Okay, so I have worked up 21 rounds and I've just popped my tub in there just to make sure it's just higher than the rim of the tub. So I know that this is the height that I want my basket to be. So you go up as far as you would like yours to be. Now for where we place the handles, this particular size that I'm making, I have a total of 112 stitches going all the way around. So what you want to do is you want to get your total number of stitches that you have. For the handle holes, I'm going to be doing 15 per handle. So that's 30. So I'm going to take the 30 away from the 112. So you take away the number that you're going to use for your handles, so you can make your handles as big or as small as you like. And then all you need to do is divide the remaining number by 2. So for me, that will be 41. So I'm going to have 15 stitches for my handle, then 41, and then another 15 for the other handle, and then another 41. So that for me should equal 112. So you decide how big you want your handles to be. If, for argument's sake, I wanted to make my handles slightly bigger and make them 20 each, then that would be 40. And the number left then would be, they'd be slightly smaller either side of your handles. Hope that makes sense. So for this size, I am going to be making, oh, before I do that, actually, I'm going to weave in my tail end. Which is nice and easy, because I've already worked over it with my initial 8 single crochets. And obviously, whatever you're putting in your basket is going to be on top of this part here. I'm going to weave that there in, cut those ends off. So working on my handles, I'm going to start my handle from the first stitch here, from my stitch marker. So I am going to chain 15. Let me just zoom back in a bit. So I'm going to be making a chain of 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then I'm going to skip 15 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So I'm going to make a single crochet into this 16th stitch to reattach to my work. So there I have, that's going to be the size of my handle. So then I'm going to work around. So I've done one single crochet here. I'm going to do another 40. 1, 2, 3, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40 and 41. So I've made 41 stitches. Now I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to chain 15. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I'm going to skip 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15. I'm going to make a single crochet back in to the next stitch to reattach, and then I'm just going to work the rest of my 41 around to where we started our first handle. Okay, so I will meet you when I get round to this point here. So I'm just coming up to where I started my handle. So again, here you've got a choice. Crochet is all about choices. If you don't like the way somebody does something, do it the way you want to do it. That's my view on it. So we're going to be placing 15 single crochets into this chain space. If you want to just go into the chain space and do a single crochet that way and just do 15 all across, that's up to you. You can do it that way, or the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to place a single crochet actually into each one of these chain stitches along. Because then I know I've definitely got 15 without counting. And I think it gives the underneath of the handle quite a nice look as well. But do it whichever way you find easiest and most comfortable. So you're going to do that all the way along. And then when you get to the other end, you're just going to go straight into that single crochet that we made after the chain space and work all the way around to the other handle and do exactly the same again. And then keep going, working your rounds up and up. So my preference for my baskets is to do, let me just show you this one. So I do 1, 2, 3, 4 rows for my handles, but you can carry on for as many rows as you'd like. And then when you get back to the beginning, so when you get back to this, so you can mark that stitch if you like, just to make sure. Either that, or you could just count the amount of rows you've got on your handle. So I'm going to go round and do another 3 rows after this row going into the chain, and then I will meet back up with you to show you how to finish off. Okay, so go around for as many times as you'd like for your basket, for your handles, and I'll meet back up with you in a sec. Okay, so I'm coming up to the end of my last round. So I've done 4 for my handle. And what I'm going to do is 2 stitches before my stitch marker. So let's get there first, so that it doesn't feel like a huge step down when you fasten off. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to slip stitch into the last 2 stitches, and then take my stitch marker out. So then you can see you've come down from a single crochet down to your slip stitches, so that when you fasten off, let's zoom back out a bit and secure your ends. You don't have a really noticeable step down in your stitches. So then I'm just going to weave in my ends. Into the back or the inside of my basket. So I just go under a few stitches along. Do once that way, and then just go back the other way. And then fasten those off, or snip those ends off. And there I have my completed basket, one that hopefully I can maybe one day get a full tub of chocolates and that will slide right in to my basket. And you could do it in Christmas colours, you could do it in a solid colour. You don't have to do it as a dash buster, but it is a really lovely scrap project. So there you have it. So I hope you found this tutorial helpful, and I'm really enjoying making more tutorials for you now. If you wanted to support me, you could head over to my Patreon. I do have some bonus content on there as well. So yeah, I would love to see your baskets. If you want to tag me on social media, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of them. So yeah, thanks ever so much for joining me, and I will see you again next time. Bye bye.